another one I'm going to read, Conversations with Bhai Vir Singh by Mulk Anand. Seems to be pretty interesting, so I thought of reading it out. It's on page 79. The poet of Conversation with Bhai Vir Singh. The poet often used to go away to Kashmir not only to avoid the summer months in Amritsar, but also to enter the unknown, which lies above beyond almost every hamlet in the valleys of that paradisal land. I happened to be staying with Bhai Vir Singh's nephew, Dr. Trilochan Singh, in a tent in Pahalgaon, while the poet was camping about a furlong away by the pine trees. And on the second day of my arrival from London, I expressed the wish to go and pay my respects to him. Although we had decided to get there at a time when he might not be involved in prayers, we actually arrived a few minutes before his meditation time was over. Tochi, as we familiarly called Dr. Trilochan Singh, and I was surprised when Bhai Vir Singh smiled, broke the prayers, and got up to welcome us. He told me he was pleased to see me in Indian clothes and not in an English suit. I said I had been to Gandhiji's ashram, where the old man had enjoined that I don't look like a monkey. So as we sat down, we had a fairly clear view of the snow-capped mountains beyond the Pahalgaon towards Baltal and Amarnath. The vision was so soup-lifting, with the red of sundown enveloping the lower reaches of the sooty cosmopolitan city, several miles long and broad, with factory chimneys smoking away and poisoning fumes of buses and the deafening noise. I was struck by the contrast with the air of Kashmir. My eyes extended towards distances on all sides which invited the feet to go. I would like to walk to Amarnath caves, I said before the festival. I was thinking of doing the same, the poet said. In that case, our whole family would like to go, put in Tochi tentatively. Nothing would be more wonderful, Bhai Vir Singh said, than for the females to take off their dupattas from their faces and fill their lungs with fresh air. My eyes stretched out in an uncanny stare towards the hilltops. The last rays of brightness in the valley promised good weather for the next day, and I felt the gloom of the years in the west suddenly vanishing, leaving me in a mood of proud humility before the landscape beyond us, which would be mine tomorrow. I imagined dimly the many streams we would cross, the freshness of the spaces and the sunny heaven above, and the whispering pine forest on the way. Bhai Vir Singh had a small book entitled Trek Tupke lying on his small table by him. It is TREL, Trel Tupke, Tupke, lying on his small table by him. It was in Urdu script, and I picked it up when he went in to order Nimbu, the cook, to make tea for us. I asked Tochi whether it would be too gauche to ask the poet for a copy. He said that Bhai Vir Singh was generous in giving, and I would only have to look towards the book and he would offer it. That's exactly what happened. I had the book in my hand and the poet came and saw me with it. He said, "Do have it. It is in Urdu, calligraphy for those who don't read Gurmukhi." I gave him my pen to inscribe the book for me. As he bent down to write, I felt that the benign smile had become vague, as though he did not want to be the patronizing poet. He seemed to want somehow to communicate that he was not patronizing me in giving me the signature. The tea came. Tochi told his uncle that he had a letter from Amritsar saying that the mercury was fairly high. Bhai Vir Singh I said, I wish all the children in the plains could be sent for a month to the hills. After a few sips of tea, I made so bold as to ask, do poems come to you only now and then, or do you find yourself writing naturally? Bhai Vir Singh looked up to the mountains and answered, you know, the fresh air sweeps through your being, especially in Kashmir, and when the breath comes in, there is a kind of flow inside which moves the dense heat and opens the pores. Then, like a bird's eye, her heart senses the flowers, the dew, or the trees, and the energy of the soul directs the pen. Animation, I ventured, of the soul rhythm and the stress force, the image, and somehow what was fixed as a thought dissolves in the air and perhaps becomes a melodic vibration. So words I began. Vibrations, he said. Strange but true that the mood compels the sinews of the soul to move, gathering the whirlwinds on the way, perhaps assimilating through as well. Only the mind becomes the color of a flower or the light of a dewdrop. The stirrings are going on all the time. One has only to catch them on the waves. I realized that the ideas with which I was occupied in my philosophical studies were never precise, but they had been put in skeletons, defined and framed, so that they seemed to be precise. Actually, there was no idea without emotional color. Thought dissolves in the surrounding areas of the unconscious until they are illuminated by fitful bursts of lighting which are always waiting in the dark. The transition from impression to idea and the image was in a twilight which was blurred, indistinct, and liquid, and was perhaps the source of poems and pictures. Of the two forms of meditation, philosophy or poetry, which do you prefer? I asked. I was aware that this was a naive question and followed from my lingering belief in the abstract. Bhai Vir Singh said, I prefer concrete images, not hard and definite, but personal, so that the feeling of the petals of the flowers comes over and reflects the face of a child. I have been reading the Imagist poets who write picture poems, I said. Some of them seem to have parallel feelings of yours. There is a poetess called H.D. I remember her poem Evening I recited. So he recited the poem. So he asked, just I'm going to read that poetess H.T. wrote. The light passes from rich to rich, flower to flower. The hypaticas widespread. Under the light grow faint, the petals reach inwards, the blue tips bend towards the blue heart, the flowers are lost. In the light is a central flourish where the failing tint swallowed up by flower and leaf, I commented. So anyways, there is this do you write poems nowadays? Bhai Vir Singh asked. No, I said. During the last 3 years in London, I've been renouncing systematic thinking, hard words, and definition through Wittgenstein's dismissal of language. I have just about got to the stage of asking whether silence would not be a good way to touch reality. I blushed after I had said this, as I seemed to be indecisive and lost. Bhai Vir Singh said, there is no need to say anything unless the poetry has really become possessed of the feeling of it. Only then is emotion fluid and the poem inevitable. Images flow in their variegated pattern if the passion is there. My eyes wandered among the pine trees. My heart was agog with possibility. My body seemed to expound inside me with the blood rushing to my face. Beyond the bright encounters, there would be a vast universe tomorrow. The contact may become real, and words might become vibrations, and vibration may liberate themselves. I try to suppress a sigh, feeling the delicate whispers in my soul become the melancholy of never being able to communicate what was really in my heart. Perhaps I could make some symbols like dewdrops for myself, and I said to conceal my turbulence. Bhai Vir Singh put his hand on my head and said, "Don't be sad, son, it'll come." So this is what Mulk Raj Anand wrote, and he has there is this okay, so it seems pretty interesting, and he has there's this poem by him, "The Lost Trail of My Songs" by Bhai Vir Singh. Master, where are those songs of my inspiration where I laid before you as offerings of worship? They have vanished into impenetrable silence. Why have they vanished? My lyre has fallen mute, and all its throbbing strings have lost their tuneful vibrations. What may I offer to you, Master, in this tongueless state? Who would act as emissary to please your ears, to please your eyes with harmony, the dancing, throbbing rhythm of the music that is no more? Beloved songs of worshipful praise, love offerings to the Master. Come back, tune up the strings of this useless lyre that rusts in silence. Recall, remark those harmonies that dance, those tunes that penetrate the soul. Awaken my heart that fast loses the sensitive keenness of its beating. Return its tempestuous oceanic stirrings in passionate warblings that imitate the stricken nightingale. Give me back the soul of a child, that it may raise its little half meaningful notes of entreaty to the Master's ear. This has been translated by Professor G.S.Guleria. The Lost Trail of My Songs by Vir Singh.